Yes, people, it's Jacob on the one up top. As the Irish would say, top of the morning to ya. Well, actually, hold up, it's 12 o'clock. Top of the afternoon. How about that one? Yeah? Because it's the afternoon, I'm allowed one of these. The reason why I'm having one of these, because it's time to celebrate. Why? I'll give you a clue. I've got a little bit of hope that I might get the club that I want back. Finally. You know, if you haven't heard the news already, it's been going around the football world. Daniel Levy, chairman of Tottenham Hotspur, has stepped down. The Lord is good. I've been praying for this day, that something happens. You know? Now, what it is, I'll be real with you, yeah? I was talking to one of my best friends who's a gooner, you know, and I didn't even know what happened. So I was in the kitchen, cooking up a curry for me and the kids. Boom, he rings me up and he's like, "You must be gassed." So I'm like, "Well, what's happened?" Now, the weird thing is, I got accepted for a new job yesterday. So I'm thinking, like, the only person I told was my sister. And I'm thinking, has he spoke to my sister? He might have, but I doubt it. So I'm like, what do you mean I should be gassed? You not heard the news? What news? About Daniel Levy? Nah, bruv. Yeah, he's just stepped down. I shouted like that loud that my kids ran into the kitchen because they thought I burnt myself cooking the curry and that. But I was just like, nah, Daniel Levy's gone, man. Daniel Levy's gone. Me and the kids jumping around. I don't think the kids understand what Daniel Levy even does but the amount of times I complain about this guy, they must have been relieved that this guy that you keep moaning about ain't there. So I was jumping around all yesterday. Few beers, gassed. But I'm going to be real, because as I've got older in life, I've realised you've got to be a bit more balanced. Now, when I look at Daniel Levy, I've always been honest from the jump, you know, especially in recent years, that Daniel Levy, when it comes to commercialing, business acumen, you know, bringing in money to this club, there ain't nobody better in world football. I'll go as far as saying world football in bringing in football and looking after a club as a business. Now, because I care more about what goes on the grass, I don't care what goes on. I find myself saying, you know, I would have just kept White Hart Lane as long as, you know, we were winning titles and playing football and all that stuff, right? And that's me being real. However, when you put balance to it, once Daniel Levy's left and I've had a sleep on it, you kind of think to yourself, you got to commend him for the position that he's left us in. Now, everybody's getting gassed like I am because Levy's gone. Now, for me, this is just part of the problem moving along. Now, when you think about it properly, you don't know what the next move's going to be. You don't know, you know, if what we got to remember is Joe Lewis is still in charge of this club. He's still got 75% possession of this club. So he's the one who has the final say. So as much as Daniel Levy's part of the problem, I need him gone as well. That's when I have a house party. When that geezer goes, like, everybody can come around. Everybody's invited to the cookout if Joe Levy sells up to somebody that I feel has ambition, right? But again, I have to deep it and understand that if they do pass the mantle on to whoever it is and we do become ambitious in the future, that's when you're going to look back at Daniel Levy and go, as much as he made his money, he left us in a nice position, you know, with the fourth richest sporting establishment in the world. £6 million revenue per game. You know, I'm always moaning about the Beyoncés and the WizKids and the AJs and the Tyson Furies and the Usyks coming and all that, yeah. But I was moaning about this just for the sheer fact that I thought he's lining his pockets, and of course he's lining his pockets. However, you never had any idea that he was going to leave this soon. In my mind, I'm thinking my son's going to be 25, 16 years time. And somehow he'll be moaning about Daniel Levy. He'll be saying, "Dad, I ain't buying the merchandise. Dad, you was right." And I'm like 65 still, you know, just saying like, yeah, this is what I've been telling you since you was a boy. So the reason why I got gas is because it's just happened just like that. I was not expecting it. I went on a few podcasts. People were saying that, you know, is Daniel Levy going to sell up soon? Because, you know, there is signs, you know, he hasn't really given the stadium a name, so that allows wiggle room for anybody to come in and put a name on it, just like, you know, when the Emirates was took over by certain people. You know, I don't think Arsenal would have wanted to call it the Emirates, but they're used to it now. But yeah, I'm not saying Daniel Levy's watching this, but for me, if his ideology was to put something in place for the next owners, I commend it. But that's where he was pulling the wool over our eyes, because if he was the one saying years ago, not just recently, years ago, we need to be winning the Champions League, we need to be winning the Premier League. Now, if you felt that we need to do that, but you said, I'm not the guy, I just want to be the stepping stone, mate, I'd hold my hands up, I'd even put Levy on the back of this shirt instead of Dembele. Because I'd be like, all right, if that's what you're going to do. It's just the same energy with Ange. Ange, realistically, is he going to take us to the top echelons in football where we're going to start winning all the big prizes? Not the way that he plays football. However, he did say, after winning the Europa League and before winning it, that, if I can be part of this club installing a winning mentality, which he hasn't had for God knows how long, that fulfills that I've fulfilled my purpose. And he has. If Ange has done what he's done, passes it on to Thomas Frank, let's say, and Thomas Frank wins something, or a manager after that, with the same group of players with a few additions, then we can only look at Ange and say, you got the ball rolling. So my thing is, if Daniel Levy gives it to an owner with ambition, or a bit more, they're prepared to spend a lot more money, and they go and start challenging for transfers with the Liverpools and the Man Cities, and they're saying, right, rather than us being at the level with the Aston Villas and the Newcastles and all these guys, or sandwiched in the middle between the Newcastles, the Villas and the elite, let's go and rustle a few feathers. And, again, Daniel Levy doesn't really spend money, so he's been lining his pockets, but we're probably the best set up club for someone to take over in Europe. You've got a stadium, you've got, a relatively good setup, with a few additions to the team, big fan base, which can get bigger if you establish yourself. You look at Man City, for instance. Man City, 25 years ago, when I was supporting Tottenham, if Tottenham had Man City home or away, I was gassed because I knew we was going to win. We'd go to Main Road and beat them 4-0 with Robbie Keane. We'd beat them 5-0 at home with Defoe, Crouchy, all these guys. It was light work. It was only when they came in and became the noisy neighbours was when all of a sudden we're challenging them for top four. Then all of a sudden they're mainstays in the top four. They get Guardiola and they're winning 4 on the bounce. If someone said to me when I was 20, Man City are going to do that. No. I've seen Man City playing in a playoff against Gillingham, my local team. So you're telling me that they were going to do what they're doing now? Nah, but then what happened? Someone came in with investment, someone came in with ambition, got the best players, got the best managers. They've now got a star on their shirt. They've won, 6 or 7 Premier Leagues now. I'm not sure how many they've won of those. Everybody's putting them into favouritism for every competition for the last 10 years or so because they've got the best manager and the best club. Man United are bigger. Man City are going to have to go and do that again for another 20 years to consider Man United. But again, even if they equal Man United did it first. So it's like, there's always that. But Man United, when they had the old, the Fergies and the Beckhams and the Ronaldos and the Giggsies and all that, would have laughed at Man City. Now Man City are laughing at them. So if they can pass it on to an ambitious owner, it's a lot easier, let's say, for Tottenham to catch up to an Arsenal or even a Chelsea in terms of trophy hauls in the next 20 years than it would ever be for Man City to catch up with Man United. But Man City are putting in the work to get there. So, a little kid that's 5 years old that supports Man City now, by the time he's my age, they might have caught up Man United. They might have won as many Premier League titles. They might have won as many Champions Leagues, because they only got to win another 2, I think, and they've caught up Man United in terms of Champions League. So that's a history that you rewrite, not for myself, but for the next generation. Can Tottenham do that? Only if the owners. Now, if I'm going to flip it and do a bit of a negative, you don't know what they're doing. Now, I've never had the trust of Daniel Levy. I've never had the trust of Joe Lewis. I've never felt that they do the best, complete best for what goes on the pitch. In terms of for themselves financially and what's best for the club with the dough, in terms of making sure that we don't fall into the traps of PSR and all that, can't fault them enough, because I never worry. When we go and spend a 50 million on Xabi Simons, a 60 million on Solanke, 60 million on Richarlison, which could be a waste. I'm not really bothered that it's going to affect us financially, because I know somewhere there's a dirty little kitty where there's peas all over the place. Like Tottenham is riddled with money. You go to the stadium, it just feels like money. You know, Daniel Levy's, he's got an aura, money. Everything's money, money, money. Joe Lewis is a rich man. So, I'd like to hope that they pass it on to some owners that want to look at a team like Tottenham and just go, right, let's make them one of the best countries in Europe, or best teams in the country. But at the same time, you've got to look at it and think Joe Lewis has got kids that are sort of, I think they're in their 50s or their 60s, and I'm hearing rumours anyway that they were influential to Spurs needing a change at the club. Now I'm hoping that they've looked at it and said, you know what, Dad, we need to be winning stuff. I'm hoping that they're Spurs fans like me, but because their dad's in charge, their dad's a tight git, and they know Uncle Daniel is as well. So I'm hoping that they go, right, Daniel, enough's enough. See you later, mate. Dad, don't worry, we got this. You're 88 now. Let us take Tottenham from here to here. And if they're the ambitious owners that we need, and they're the ones that go and, put money down and get deals done properly, I'm all ears. I don't care whether it's the kids. I don't care whether it's someone from Qatar. I don't care if it's someone from Jamaica. As long as you got the money and you want Tottenham to challenge with the elites in this country and in Europe, you have me. Because Europa League, yes, we won that. 2 League Cups, yes, we won that. But we've always been the nearly team. We've always been someone that's finished second in the league. We finished third in a 2-horse race. Champions League final, lost that with the incorrect decisions. I want to be that club that challenges it. And I'm not saying that we're the only club that deserves happiness, because we're all saying it about Newcastle. Newcastle got some brilliant fans, But there's so many clubs in the world, not even in the world, just in England, that deserves it. Do Burnley fans that have supported Burnley 50 years, do they not deserve something like that? You can't say no, because they've had to struggle probably more than I have. Have Stevenage, Grimsby, all of these guys. Grimsby, that victory against United goes up in their Hall of Fame at their little pitch. So do they not deserve a Premier League game, a Premier League, run? Of course they do. So I'm not going to sit there and say Tottenham do deserve it, but at the same time, I'm talking from a personal note. I've been here through the rough and fun. I've supported Tottenham when I was at school and we finished 15th and I was gassed. I've been there when we've played with Robbie Keane and we finished 9th and I'm like, sweet, we're in the top half. I've been there when Martin Jol, made me believe that we can finish above Arsenal, because when I was growing up, Arsenal, a North London derby, I never looked forward to. I was happy to go over the park and play football. My dad and uncles would be watching on the telly. I'd be happy to go and play on the swings and come home, find out that we lost 4-1, Henry hat-trick. I just might watch it on Match of the Day. I'm not going to sit there for minutes. So, there's times where I've watched the North London derbies and we've got battered. Sometimes I've watched them, but slowly but surely, managers have made me believe. And, all this hype about Daniel Levy, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been a top 6 side. Before Daniel Levy took over, and I'm talking years before that, maybe even before, but definitely before my time, Tottenham were winning European trophies. Tottenham were, qualifying for those. We were known as a team that won cups. Everyone was like, yeah, Tottenham will win cups. We were the first team in England to win a European trophy of any degree. Yeah, we've won 8 FA Cups. You can't sit there and tell me that we weren't a big side before my time. So to say that all Daniel Levy's done is kind of brought that feeling back with qualifying for the Champions League. But qualifying for the Champions League obviously puts us out there, but more importantly, brings the dough in. So all I'm saying is, if Daniel Levy's left a nice little kitty for the next owner, or the next owner's got a nice little kitty he's prepared to put in, let's go. We've put the work in. It's not like Daniel Levy hasn't done what he needed to do commercially, because the setup is unreal. Now, the only thing I worry about is who's going to come buy that. Now, if there is a buyer, you're talking a lot of money. But the only people that are going to come in are the Saudi guys. So that's going to split division, because a lot of people don't like Saudi investment. I've always been critical of it. When Man City did it, when Chelsea had it with Abramovich, not necessarily Saudi investment, but investment from a different country. I've always been critical of it. But that's we're sort of 10 years ago I was complaining about it. Now it's just a common theme, isn't it? Newcastle have done it. Liverpool have got American owners, so have Chelsea. You've got the Cronkies. Not many clubs are being run by English. So my thing is, I'm not racist. Don't care where you come from. Don't care if you're English. Don't care if you're Bermudan. I don't care if you're Russian. If you're going to come in and do what's right and maintain what Daniel Levy did, but also bring success on the pitch, I'm all ears. Because Daniel Levy, as much as he's left the club in a good state, I wish you all the best, mate. Go and sit on your yachts. Go and do what you want to do. If you've rinsed all the fans for their money, you go and do that, mate. Leave it with someone else and leave us to get what we deserve, which I believe is a successful run domestically as well as in Europe. That's all I got to say, guys. Hope you're enjoying the international break. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. I'm going to go and finish my glass of wine and carry on dancing at the fact that I might, and I repeat, might be getting the club that I love back. Jacob on the one up top. Come on, you Spurs.